Hi, my name's Jason, and I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful crispy skinned salmon. There's so many different varieties of salmon. I'm going to use Atlantic salmon. There's coho and king and Alaskan and all these things, and they're all incredibly expensive. Atlantic salmon is probably the best bang for your buck, let's say. There's also in the stores you'll see sockeye salmon. Sockeye looks really pretty. It's that deep orange color. It's a thinner fillet. It tends to be a little leaner, so if you are going to cook with that, you're going to want to probably cook a little bit less time because that'll dry out pretty quickly. But if you're going to put it on a grill, that's the way to go. This piece I'm going to use, I'm just going to pan roast it. If you're getting salmon from the store, I would certainly recommend going to your butcher counter. Usually they'll sell it in by the pound or half pound or whatever you want. They'll sell individual portions. I like to get the whole fillet. So what you'll do is anywhere from 1 to 3 pounds usually at a time. You cut the pieces yourself so you can control it that way. It'll have the skin on, so when you cook it, it's nice and crispy and delicious. So the piece I have here is probably about 6-7 ounces. Pull it out of the fridge about 15 to 20 minutes ago. When you're cooking meat, it's a nice idea to kind of bring it up a little bit more to room temperature. Oftentimes when you see like a piece of salmon or a piece of steak in a restaurant or in a magazine, it's all cooked perfectly even the exact same way through. There's no gray ring on the outside. Part of that is because they've done it this way. They bring it up a little bit to room temperature so that when it hits the pan, the muscles don't tense quite so quickly and you get a little bit more of an even cook on the meat. So all we're gonna do with this salmon is salt and pepper. Very easy. We'll do one side, we'll do the other. When you're seasoning, I'm sure you've seen where people are doing it from up high. There's actually a reason. They're not just doing that to be silly. The reason that you'll do that, you get a much more even distribution of everything that you're putting on your meat, your fish, even your vegetables. So if you're doing this in a pan and you're trying to do a bunch of vegetables in a pan or something like that, put it up a little bit higher than you would normally, and as it falls, it'll distribute a lot more evenly. You have less super salty bites and no salty bites. So that's the first side. Second side with the skin, we'll put a little bit of salt on that. You don't need a ton. Salmon has a natural little bit of salinity because it comes from usually salt water, although it can live in fresh water too. And then we've got a seasoned piece of salmon. So what I'll do next, we're gonna put our pan on the heat, a little bit of olive oil, and we'll get cooking. Right now, I've got a 10-inch frying pan. The size of the pan, again, actually really does matter. If you're doing, I'm only going to do one piece of fish. If you're doing 2, 3, or 4 for a family, use a bigger pan. You can put a couple pieces in a pan like this. Anything more than that, you would want a bigger one so that there's space in between. Otherwise, your salmon's just going to start kind of boiling in oil rather than searing. So when you're doing crispy skinned salmon, I've got about a tablespoon of olive oil in my pan. It's on medium-low heat. You don't want anything scorching hot, and you certainly don't want it smoking. That'll burn the oil and your salmon. Bummer both ways. So when you're doing this, skin side down in the pan first. Always start here and put it away from yourself. And that is the sound you want to hear. The reason you put it away from yourself is obviously if you put it towards yourself or just drop it in a pan, you can get oil splattering everywhere. That's how I got these beautiful little marks on my arm here. So avoid that whenever possible. When you're cooking salmon, skin side first, we're going to let this sit for about 5 minutes. Once it's cooked roughly halfway, we'll flip it again. We'll cook the top side and let it cook the rest of the way through, and then we'll have salmon. So more in a minute. So my salmon's been in the pan cooking for probably about maybe 3 minutes at this point. You can see that there's smoke coming off of the pan. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but just be ready to turn it up or down from medium to low and back and forth. Right now, I'm gonna give it a quick flip with a fish spatula. You can use tongs if you'd like to. Fish tends to be pretty delicate. Salmon has a good flake to it. So if you squeeze a little too hard, especially once it's a little more cooked, you run the risk of kind of mashing your beautiful piece of salmon. So I think the fish spatula is the way to go. Salmon, any fish that you're cooking in a pan will tell you it's ready when it kind of will move on its own. So I'm not putting hardly any pressure in here, and my salmon is pretty free to roam about the cabin, as it were. So at this point, I can go ahead and flip it. You've got a fish spatula. It's nice and long for that very reason. Give it a flip, away from you again, and then you're just gonna let that sit. Now you can see the skin is beautifully crispy all the way through. You can see on the side, the salmon's starting to cook. That's what you want to see. So as it cooks from the bottom, it will go, and then from what was the top of the salmon, from the bottom it will cook up, and you'll get a beautifully cooked piece of salmon all the way through. So we're gonna let this sit for another probably 4 or 5 minutes, something like that. Once it's done, we'll take it off, and then we get to eat. So our salmon's gone on for about 5 minutes on both sides. It's still not totally done yet. This is a relatively thick piece of salmon. It's probably right now, it's rare. You could eat it, but I think most people are gonna be more comfortable with mid-rare to medium, if not even more. One way to avoid getting too much color on one side or the other certainly is to flip it. You wanna flip the fish as few times as possible. But since it's skin side up right now, and that's what we're trying to get super crispy, we're gonna flip it one more time onto the skin side, let it finish cooking for about 1 more minute, and really sear that skin nice and hard. And then once that's done, we'll plate it up. And our salmon just came out of the pan. All told, probably about 12 minutes to cook. I know it said 5 and 5 earlier. That's a good starting point. If your piece is thinner than this, certainly you would want to stick to that, if not a little bit less. You can always put it back in the pan if you need to, but definitely start there. So right now we've got a beautifully crispy skin, and the way that you retain that crispy skin when you're plating it with whatever you're gonna plate it with. I'll put up a photo of a plate that I've done with crispy salmon. If you're gonna do a sauce, if you're plating it with rice, broccoli, risotto, pasta, whatever you're plating it with, this is the last piece. So your salmon goes on top, skin up, and any sauce that you wanna do, you can put around the plate, you can put at the bottom of the plate, but please don't put it directly onto your salmon. All the hard work that you did to get this beautifully crispy skin will go out the window, and you will have soggy, weird salmon skin, and no one wants to eat that. So all you have to do is cut into it, I suppose, and you should be able to hear the skin. There it is. And then with that, we've got basically, I mean, it's cooked all the way through, if not even to maybe medium plus, almost to mid-well. I'd say this is probably the spot people would be most comfortable eating salmon. I like it maybe a little less than this. Some might like it a little more, but I think this is a good place to start. Anybody that likes salmon, I think would be pretty good with this. So that would be my recommendation with fall right now. Being fall, this would be great with butternut squash, like I said, risotto. This takes well to pomegranates, certainly anything with citrus. So if you were to do maybe a mashed potato with some orange zest or something like that. In the summer, this goes great with an orzo salad, just grilled simply with some vegetables. Really with salmon, this is a blank palette. You can serve it with whatever you'd like. But if you're doing it this way with the crispy skin, I think you'll be happy either way. So that is perfectly crispy cooked salmon. Thanks for watching.